Hi, I'm Paul. Welcome to MIG Monday. We get a lot of questions about welding tables. You know, some people want to build their own, or can they buy, is there someplace they can buy one? What are the advantages of buying one versus making one? Well, you can make arguments in either direction for that, but we found this table that I kind of like. It's from a company called Tab and Slot. It's called the CertiFlat FabBlock table. It comes in a variety of sizes, and there's certainly options as well. What you see before you here on the table is the table, the kit. It's all laser cut, CNC laser cut stuff, so everything is very precision. That's why they call it the CertiFlat, because it's very, very precise. And basically all you do is box it together and put some tack welds in to hold it in place, and then do your final welds, and you've got yourself a very nice table. You can see there's holes on everything, and you know that of course that helps make it a little bit lighter. It's still a fairly heavy, robust table, but you can also use these holes for tooling and things like that for whatever kind of project you've got in mind. We also have over here, we went ahead and got some of the optional things, the leg kit, and we also got casters. So what we're going to do is we're going to just put this thing together as a step-by-step so that you can see just how easy it is, and we'll go from there. All right, we're about ready to start our assembly of this. A couple things I want to point out first before we get ahead and do that. These are machined pieces. Even though they're laser cut and everything, they're still lubricated a little bit. So what I've already done is taken a wipe and gone and cleaned off the excess oil and stuff, just so that it's easier to work with, it's cleaner to work with, and then plus when I go to weld, I'm not going to have any issues with oil and stuff on there. And then, you know, this is called the CertiFlat because it is certified to be perfectly flat. It's very precision cut with the laser. However, that doesn't mean that there couldn't be an occasional burr or something somewhere. So while I was wiping them down, I did look and pay attention to the pieces to see if there were any burrs. And I did find a couple that I thought might be a little bit of a problem. So I took a file and I filed off those burrs so that you know, we wouldn't have any trouble when we start fitting everything together. Now, the kit that I've got, the table comes in a couple of different sizes, and you can get a custom size if you want. They're pretty easy to work with along those lines. But this particular table, I've got 3 pieces that are going to run the length of the table, and I've got 5 pieces that are going to go across this way. And they're going to form almost like a lattice work. And this is what we're seeing the table here. This is actually going to be the underside of the table. And this is going to be the framework and the stiffener part of the table that we put together now. So let me start showing you how that all works together. Essentially, get my thumb caught under there. Luckily, there's no skin in that. Okay. Now, anyway, you'll see that there's slots and tabs, okay? And on the table, you can see there's cut slots here. So what I'm going to do is just take these, and everywhere there's a slot, I'm going to stick the tab in here. You can see it goes together pretty nicely. You guys have really thought this out quite well. All right, so now I've got the pieces that are going to go laterally, and now I'm going to let me get this out of my way here and take these. And this slot and tab are going to just interlock, just like so. Like so. You know, it's actually almost scary when things go together this easily. I usually, my luck usually runs, some horrible ordeal will happen very shortly. There we go. And we've got the first section assembled. Okay, what we're going to do now is put the sides on. Now, this also has the same slot and tab type of situation. Well, you know, one of the things I didn't mention earlier that I probably should have, these are laser cut, and like most sheet metal, they can be some pretty sharp edges. So you've noticed I'm wearing gloves while I'm handling this. This is probably a pretty good idea because you could easily cut your hand. So just from a safety standpoint, pretty much wear a good solid pair of gloves. These gloves I'm wearing even have protection on the backside, so that, you know, if you get hit with something, it's not going to slice right through your hand or through the glove. Anyway, basically, these just fit in the tab and the slot. Now, these pieces are pretty heavy. This is 1/4-inch steel, so it's pretty robust stuff. So if you are working by yourself, you might want to be pretty careful, or maybe even get somebody to assist you to help hold things in until you get them into position. All right, I got that side pretty much in place. Now, remember, these don't snap in place and stay there. They, you know, this is just a slot and then a tab. So because this is on the end and there's nothing really to support it, even though I can let go of it, if I bump the table somewhere, this could fall off and, you know, either land on my foot or just on something else and break. So what I'm going to do is just throw a little bit of a clamp on here just to secure that to the side so I don't have to worry about that falling off. Okay, now we'll get the other side over here and we'll be halfway home. All right, got that side on, and just like the other side, I'm going to go and put a little clamp on here just to kind of for safety purposes, realistically, so it doesn't fall off and hurt me or anybody else. Doesn't have to be clamped tight, just enough to hold it in place. All right, so those are the two long sides. Now we do the short sides, and essentially it all works the same way, folks. All right, there we go. All set, got the sides on. All right, now what I've got done here now, remember the goal here is to make this perfectly flat. All these cross pieces, we want to get down very tight against the tabletop. And so what I've done is I've got a couple of straps that I've put across here to hold things together squarely. And right here in the very center, this is key right here, is to get this down flat against the table. So what I've done is, this doesn't come with the kit, is these bolts. I had to go out and buy a couple of 8-inch carriage bolts. I did 1/2-inch carriage bolts, 8-inch by 1/2-inch. And as a cross piece, I just happened, because I got the leg kit, these pieces happen to have holes in them that just lined up beautifully for me, one of those kind of luck out kind of deals. If you're not using a leg kit or have something that you can use, you'll have to get some type of strap to come across here so that when you tighten these down, you'll get a downward pressure and get this whole thing clamped against the tabletop, okay? So, without that done, you want to check and make sure there aren't any gaps anywhere. An easy way to do that is just a flashlight on the opposite side. If you see too much light coming through, then you know, I got a fit up problem here. I'm going to maybe have to disassemble it and find out why it's not fitting the way it should. Maybe it's a piece of a burr or something that's or a piece of crud that you overlooked that's causing it to not fit up right. But that's pretty important to get that very, very tight all the way around all these members, okay? So once we got all that done, then we're pretty much ready to start putting this thing together on a permanent basis using some welding, all right? Okay, now I have everything all squared up, everything fits tight. We're ready to do some tack welding. Now, because this is precision and flat, we don't want to put a lot of heat in one area. So what we're going to do is spread out. We're going to do a little tack weld over here, then I'm going to do one on the other there. And I'm going to work my way around the table and basically just go round and round, a little tack here, a little tack there. Now when I make these tack welds, what I'm going to do is go inside this slot where the tab is sticking into the slot. And if I do this correctly, I'll be able to tack weld it without having a big glop of metal sticking out where I wouldn't have to grind it, but it would just keep it looking nicer by not having, the weld hanging out of here. It'd be just a nice flush weld. So everything looks a lot more professional that way. All right, so I'm going to make a weld, and then we're just going to kind of skip around, and that should just, eliminate any distortion that we might have. For my settings, I'm just using the Smart MIG settings here, which is just an automatic thing. You set it for the thickness that you're welding, and it gives you the procedures for it. So it's almost a no-brainer. Okay, now here we go. Okay, I've got all the tabs tacked up except for the corners. And before I do that final tack on those, I want to take a straight edge and just make sure everything is perfectly level. And they are, everything touches all the way across. Level is that way. And also this way. So I think we're all set. All we need to do now is tack the corners, and we'll be done with the tack welding, and then we'll start working on the inside parts. Okay? Now we're going to tack weld the corners, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do one, and go around twice and have them both done. What I want to do is make sure I get down deep in the corner so that I fuse the two plates together. So here we go. Okay, all right, we've got our sides tack welded. Now what we're going to do is put in these corner pieces. They're stiffeners. I've already got 3 of them laid in place. They should just drop into place, but they can be a little bit, might need to be like this one, for example, doesn't just drop right in place, but a little hammer or this hammer, it fits all in nice and snug and flat. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go tack, 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 and get those in place. And then I'll move to the next one, and the next one, and the next one. What these do is keep this securely square. I mean, this is all, like I said, this is all laser cut and everything, and it's designed to keep it square. I'm going to pop this back out again just for a minute to show you something. All of these have one corner that's got a radius on it, and that's just to guide you that goes to the corner, okay? It doesn't matter whether it's this way or this way, it just has to be on the corner. If you install it this way, it won't fit. It's just too big. It's not, you'll see it just won't fit, and then you'll end up having troubles down the road. So radius into the corner. And we're all set to go. All right, we've got all the stiffeners tacked in place. Now, the next thing we have to do is, remember these pieces all went together by just sliding down slots like this. So what I'm going to do, we don't need to and don't want to do full length welds on here to hold them together. We just want to do maybe like a 1-inch weld on 2 sides opposite of each other, right where that joint is, where the 2 bottom parts come together. We just want to do a 1-inch weld and a 1-inch weld. Now, what we're trying to do by making only 1-inch welds is minimize the heat that we're putting in there, because that will cause distortion. So when I weld on one side, it's going to get hot. And of course, when I'm done welding, what happens? It starts to cool. And as metal starts to cool, what does it do? It contracts and starts to pull over. So what I want to do is make a 1-inch weld on one side, excuse me, and then while it's still hot, as quickly as possible, get to the other side and make a 1-inch weld opposite it, so that the 2 contracting forces offset each other and keep everything nice and straight, okay? So That's our next move, is to start to do these inside corners. Each one, on our particular table, you know, we've got a good number of sections. The only place we're not going to do anything is on the outer edges. This is only for the places where it crosses like this. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 different joints that I got to do that on in here. All right? All right, we've completed welding the cross members on the other side, and now it's time to flip it over. This could be one of the more expensive parts of your operation here if you have a table as large as ours. As I mentioned earlier, this table comes in different sizes. This is a pretty good size one, and it weighs quite a bit. And the cost I was referring to refers to the fact you probably have to buy a couple of kegs and invite 6 or 7 friends over to be able to flip this thing over, because it's very, very heavy. So anyway, once you accomplish that, and of course obviously do that very much with a lot of care, because it is heavy and can do some damage if it should happen to land on your foot. Anyway, now that we have it flipped over, this whole top is still only held in place by the bolts that we've put in. We haven't done anything to weld the top to the bottom frame yet. So we're going to take care of that now. You notice that all these slots all over the table where the tabs fit into the slots. What we're going to do now is tack weld these all, because we do want to be concerned about distortion. We can't just start willy-nilly welding. So I'm going to start in the center with a tack weld, and then I'm just going to basically work my way all the way around and around and around, working towards the outside with a tack weld. Once the tack welds are done, then I can come in and finish weld. Now, what I'm going to do to tack weld is I'm going to take the wire from my gun and put it right here in the center of the slot up against this tab and the bottom, right in that corner right there, do a little tack weld. Again, I don't have to put a lot of metal there, just enough to hold it down, but you want to just keep your wire from your wire feeder right in the center. And conversely, also, not conversely, but also when I come to do the finish weld, this is also where I'm going to aim the wire right in the center, in between these two surfaces, and just go on across. And not putting too much, you know, make sure I have enough weld metal that I'm attaching to both the bottom and each side, but not putting so much in that it lumps up over the top of the weld table. All right? All right, now I've got the table tacked on every place there was a slot around the edges on the center, and of course I did it gradually working outward to minimize distortion. Now the top is held down tightly all the way around. I don't have to worry about distortion so much anymore. Now the only thing left to do is do the fill-in of each slot and tab and do a finish weld. And like I mentioned before, just get down in the groove, try not to lump up too much metal. Basically all that does is save you grinding time when you're done. So try to keep it as flush as you can, and you have yourself a great tabletop, and then we can continue with the rest of the project. All right, so let me finish these welds up and we'll be on our way. All right, now I've finished the welds of the slots on the top. The only thing remaining to do are the ones all the way around the edge. Now, if you notice, that's a different joint configuration than I had on the top. Okay, this is actually just like welding a fillet, because you're going to have a 90-degree angle there. So you're just going to go right into the joint itself to make your weld, just like you would any normal fillet weld. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, now we have all the welds done around the sides, the middle, all the slots are filled. If you recall, the only reason for these bolts being here is actually to hold the top securely to the base. And so then now that that's done, we can remove these and get them out of our way. All right, we have our table flipped back over so we can do the remaining welds. Of course, that called for another keg party and a bunch more friends to come over. Now, actually, well, we were lucky enough to have a forklift here that we could flip it over with, but you know, like I said, you want to get the appropriate amount of physical help to flip this thing because it is pretty heavy. At any rate, now what we have remaining welds to do, we're going to weld these end pieces more securely because right now they're only tacked in place. And then all the vertical surfaces all the way around where the tabs stick through, we're going to make, they're tacked now, but we're going to make the finish welds very much like we did on the top of the table. We want to, so they don't stick out or protrude. And then we'll be done with the tabletop. And the only thing left to do will be to add on the leg kit and the casters. All right, so let's get welding and we'll take care of this. All right, everything's all welded up. The table is done. All that remains now is to flip it over and use it, or if next week we're going to have a part 2 where we're going to install a legs and caster kit. So stay tuned for that, and until then, we'll see you next week. Well, if you learned something today or like what you saw, please feel free to subscribe and keep an eye out for new episodes every MIG Monday.